Welcome to the Dungeon Talk, a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition podcast providing tutorials, inspiration, info, and interviews about aspects of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm your host, Nathaniel, and you're listening to the Dungeon Talk, episode number 5, The Fighter. Dungeon Talk! Dungeon Talk! Dungeon Talk! Do-do-do-do! A human in clanging plate armor holds her shield before her as she runs toward the masked goblins. An elf behind her, clad in studded leather armor, peppers the goblin with arrows loosed from his exquisite bow. The half-orc nearby shouts orders, helping the two combatants coordinate their assault to the best advantage. A dwarf in chainmail interposes his shield between the ogre's club and his companion, knocking the deadly blow aside. His companion, a half-elf in scale armor, swings two scimitars in a blinding whirl as she circles the ogre, looking for a blind spot in its defenses. A gladiator fights for sport in an arena, a master with his trident and net, skilled at toppling foes and moving them around for the crowd's delight and his own tactical advantage. His opponent's sword flares with blue light an instant before she sends lightning flashing forth to smite him. All of these heroes are fighters, perhaps the most diverse class of characters in the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons. Questing knights, conquering overlords, royal champions, elite foot soldiers, hardened mercenaries, bandit kings, all as fighters. They all share an unparalleled mastery with weapons and armor, and a thorough knowledge of the skills of combat, and they are well acquainted with death, both meting it out and staring it defiantly in the face. The fighter is easily to say one of the most diverse classes in the entire game, as it provides so many subclass options, not nearly as much as the cleric, obviously, but a whole lot of subclass options, and it's just really fun to play as the most played character combination is human fighter of all. So, because there's so many different abilities you can go with. You could go with a tank, you could go with a heavy hitter, you could go with DPS, you could go with hit and run tactics character. There are even several classes that have access to magic subclasses within the fighter. So let's get right into it. The first class description option section is well-rounded specialists, where it talks about how fighters learn the basics of every weapon, every type of fighting style, honed to deadly perfection. They know every single way, and they're well-rounded specialists, because most of them, even though they are incredibly well-skilled at different types of fighting, with an axe, or a bow, or a rapier, longsword, greatsword, or a crossbow, or even a net, it says that they do often specialize, which makes sense, because it's not very often that a character can wield all those weapons at once. Beyond that, they do have a basic degree of familiarity with every single weapon, so even if it's like the weirdest weapon that came from a far off land, a fighter could probably pull off a really well done hit with it. So they're pretty good. Then talks about the Trained for Danger section. The Trained for Danger section talks about how the fighter, it talks about what a fighter is, and the fighter's general idea. And it says not every member of, like, a general city watch or village militia or even like a queen's army is a fighter. They're oftenly untrained soldiers, and I haven't really entirely figured this out entirely, because as a dungeon master, you usually want to put all like your guards and stuff at like pretty good levels because they defend the city and everything. Even if but then this has come up a lot where it's saying, no, they're not like super good military, they're just random dudes who are like, I'll do it, and a volunteer. So, I'm wrong there. It then talks about what what more trained fighters are and what an actual fighter would be. So veteran soldiers, military officers, trained bodyguards, dedicated knights, and similar figures would actually be fighters. It then does an adventuring tie-in, like most classes do, where it asks, hey, what made you a fighter? Like, what draws you to adventuring as a fighter? As it says that fighters are drawn to use their training as adventurers, dungeon delving, monster slaying, normal D&D stuff. Creating a fighter is the next section, and it poses two main questions. It asks, where did you get your combat training, and what sets you apart from the mundane warriors around you? Were you particularly ruthless? Did you get extra help from a mentor, perhaps because of your exceptional dedication? And then it goes into a variety of really interesting examples. And I love when D&D does this, because it gets you thinking on how to make a more interesting character than just here's a human fighter with a sword and a shield. Yay. So exciting. The next part of the fighter is their abilities, where they gain the fighting style ability at first level, which is a pretty cool ability because it ties into the idea of fighters being well-rounded, but also being specialized, because they'll have different fighting styles, like an archery style, defense, dueling, great weapons, protection, two weapons, etc. Because in their proficiencies, they have proficiencies in every single weapon or armor and shields, so they can use anything. Then they have the second wind ability, which means you have a limited well of stamina that you can draw to protect yourself from harm. So basically, as a bonus action, you can regain 1d10 plus your fighter level hit points. I've played a couple of fighters, and this has come in especially handy when you play characters that are when you play interesting characters. I played this one character who was a bit wimpy and scared, but he was an arcane archer, which is one of the subclasses in Xanathar's Guide. He was very wimpy and scared, but he would just we were fighting ranged enemies, and he was the only one who could hit them, but they would always hit us too, so it was really helpful when I could just bonus action heal yourself. Action Surge is your second level ability, where you can push yourself beyond your normal limits for just a moment, where you take an extra action, and then it's a set. So then you have to you can do it twice before a rest at 17th level, but when you first get it, only once before you can until you take a short or long rest. Then you have your martial archetype. Now, the archetype is what they call the fighter subclasses, and there are a lot, so let's get into it. The very first martial archetype is the champion. Now, the champion is all about raw physical power, being buff, being the brute, all about punchy punch, being really strong, and you get a lot of stuff about being really physical, and a lot of mostly physical damage. So if you're going to play a swordsman or something, you would want to use the champion. The improved critical is their their only third level ability, where your weapon attacks become a crit on a roll of 19 or 20, which is really useful if you're doing a heavy hitter, because then you can just double your damage. Remarkable Athlete is their 7th level ability, and this makes sense because you have the champion is supposed to be the brute, the buff guy. So it being a really good athlete would make sense. So they gain half your proficiency bonus rounded up to any strength, dexterity, or constitution check that you make that doesn't already use your proficiency bonus. So this is really useful. In addition, when you make a running long jump, the distance you can cover increases by a number of feet equal to your strength modifier. So that's really cool. Your additional fighting style is your 10th level ability, where you can go back to the first fighter ability you get, which is fighting style, and choose a second fighting style, which is as long as it's not the same one. Because even if you get the option again, you can't choose one option more than once. So if you were to choose archery, you can't choose archery again and get a +4 bonus to your ranged weapons. Superior critical is an even better version of improved critical, where at 15th level, you can score a crit on a roll of 18, 19, or 20. And then at level 18, you gain the Survivor ability, where you attain the pinnacle of resilience in battle. At the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. So if you have no more than half of your hit points left, you don't gain this benefit if you have 0 hit points, but as long as you have no more than half, you can only do it if you have no more than half of your hit points. So it balances itself out. So what's really cool about the fighter is, this could be seen either way. They get all the way up to a 9th level ability, all fighters, while all of the rest of their abilities are specific to their subclasses. Because they stop gaining fighting abilities after 9th level, and then it's all up to their subclasses. So this really shows that they have the whole specialization thing. And so the next subclass, Battlemaster, here I'll go with an example. They do have the typical 3rd level ability, where they get special maneuvers, special superiority dice, and special saving throws, where they get, which is their save DC to your maneuvers, and maneuvers are discussed at the end of the class description if you want to check them out. I'm not going to go into all of them. Student of War is your 3rd level ability, which is another 3rd level ability where you gain another proficiency with artisan's tools. And this is because battle masters are your typical sort of knight, scholarly knight even, where they're very well-rounded, and they not even just within combat. They know just a lot of knowledge and information, so it's pretty cool. Know Your Enemy is your 7th level ability, where if you spend at least 1 minute observing or interacting with another creature outside combat, you learn special info on what they can do. So basically, the DM will tell you if the creature is your equal, superior, or inferior in regard of 2 of the following characteristics, and that is your strength score, dexterity score, constitution score, armor class, current hit points, total class levels if they have any, and then fighter class levels if they have any. So this is where it gets all into the specialization, because similar to the champion, where they get improved critical and then superior critical, the Battlemaster gains the improved combat superiority. And then they list all the different maneuvers. And your maneuvers are listed in alphabetical order, and there's a bunch of them where you can do a bunch of really cool things that you normally wouldn't be able to do in, like, D&D, because you can't, or at least you couldn't do them well skilled. You could say, like, hey, I'm going to do a trip attack. You can't really do that, because unless you're a monk, there's not much that you can do. But maneuvers gives you the trip attack ability, or sweeping, or the rally ability, or lunging attack, or feinting attack, maneuvering, menacing, parry, precision, disarming, distracting. It's really cool for what this subclass has to offer. The last subclass that is in the player's handbook is, for the fighter, is very interesting, and it's your very typical sword mage, which you find in a lot of, like, fantasy video games, but there is no actual sword mage in D&D, because I think they want to kind of do their own thing compared to what most video games or other games similar to D&D would use. So they have the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight is basically, they use magical techniques similar to the way wizards do, because they also draw from the wizard spell list, which makes sense. And they use intelligence as their spellcasting ability. They also gain the ability Weapon Bond at 3rd level, as well as spellcasting, where they can learn a ritual that creates a magical bond between you and a weapon over the course of 1 hour, which can be done during, like, a short rest or something. And this is sort of like literally a sword mage, because sword mages have the whole thing with, like, they have a magic sword, and that's the whole idea. But, of course, this is D&D. They kind of want to do their own thing, and I like that, because it differentiates itself from other games. War Magic is your 7th level ability. Whenever you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can also make an extra weapon attack as a bonus action, which is really useful. So if you use something like Toll the Dead, which is the most damaging cantrip, because you can do up to a d12 of damage, you can then make an extra attack as a fighter. And then if you even want to use your extra attack ability, you can then do even more attacks. And then since you also get the action surge, you can take an extra action to do an extra attack, and then take another bonus action to do another extra attack, and then cast a cantrip as one of those things. The fighters get a lot of attacks. Eldritch Strike is your 10th level ability, where you learn how to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's resistance. So whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against any spell you cast. So that's really good for Toll the Dead. Toll the Dead is one of my favorite spells. Arcane Charge is your 15th level ability, where you gain the ability to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see whenever you use your action surge. So it's very much, fighter subclasses are very much about specialization and the increasing of your abilities throughout your specialization. And then improved war magic, since most of the fighters get an improved version of whatever ability they have. At 18th level, whenever you use your action to cast a spell, you can make another weapon attack as a bonus action. So it's upgrade of war magic. Now, those are the last subclasses in the player's handbook. I'm then going to move on to Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Xanathar's Guide is one of my absolute favorite books because it has so much to offer for players, dungeon masters, anybody who has an appreciation for Dungeons & Dragons. It's just absolutely incredible. So let's get right into it. The very first subclass in Xanathar's Guide is the Arcane Archer. Now, the Arcane Archer is I played this subclass, and it's pretty interesting because it was also in Unearthed Arcana, and then they brought it into the martial archetypes of the Xanathar's Guide. You gain Arcane Archer lore at 3rd level, which is you get proficiency in either Arcana or Nature, and then you can choose to learn either Prestidigitation or Druidcraft. I recommend Druidcraft if you're going for for a player who is more mechanically focused. Prestidigitation if you're more of a roleplay focused character. I would always go for Prestidigitation for this reason. I love roleplaying. Arcane Shot at 3rd level gives you a bunch of options for different types of magical arrows, which is really cool because a lot of the time in video games they'll give the archer character will get like a bunch of magical arrows, even though they're not magic at all. And it's kind of weird how they get that, even if they're not like magic. Like the Demon Hunter in Diablo, they just get like a bunch of magical fire arrows totally random. But this Arcane Archer allows you to do that with a bit of an explanation behind it. You're a magical archer using Fey magic, specifically, and Elven style stuff. Because there's a lot of Arcane Shot options, and they're very fun to use. Banishing Arrow is probably my favorite because it basically brings them to a harmless location in the Feywild for a little bit of time. So, and at 18th level, it also gives them 2d6 force damage if you get really high level in a fighter. I've never gotten the chance to play that high of a level character, so let me know what you think. If you guys have anything to say about that. The Magic Arrow is their 7th level ability, where they can infuse arrows with more magic. So whenever they fire a non-magical arrow from a short bow or a longbow, you can make it magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. So stuff like, so I've said this before, this is stuff like bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage, because it's probably one of the most used immunities in resistances. So being able to overcome this is always a really good thing. They also gain at 7th level the Curving Shot ability, where you learn how to direct an errant arrow toward a new target, where you can make an attack roll with a magic arrow and miss. You can use a bonus action to reroll the attack against a different target within 60 feet. Ever Ready Shot is your 15th level ability, where your magical archery is available whenever a battle starts. So if you roll initiative and have no uses of Arcane Shot remaining, you regain an extra use of it. So this is really useful because Arcane Shot is the main ability of the subclass, and since there's also the whole specialization thing, this makes sense because it's all focusing on the archery and our magic stuff. And then it lists the Arcane Shot options. Cavalier is the next one, and the Cavalier is mounted combat. And mounted combat isn't usually a thing that's done a lot in D&D, but I think it's fun to do, so this one's pretty cool. This subclass is really cool. You gain a bonus proficiency in a list of different spells, or you can learn an extra language. You gain Born to the Saddle, where if you fall off your mount and descend no more than 10 feet, you can land on your feet if you're not incapacitated. And mounting or dismounting a creature does not cost you only 5 feet rather than half your speed. So your movement is a lot more. Unwavering Mark is another third level ability where you can menace your foes, foiling their attacks and punishing them for harming others. So whenever you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can mark the creature until the end of your next turn. This effect ends early if you're incapacitated or you die. Or if someone else marks that creature. While it is within 5 feet of you, a creature marked by you has disadvantage on any attack roll that doesn't target you. So this is similar to Hunter's Mark, because Hunter's Mark does something similar. I don't remember. I haven't played a Ranger in a really long time. With good reason, too, which I will explain in the Ranger episode, because the Rangers are a bit interesting with what's happened with the Rangers. So, in addition, if a creature marked by you deals damage to anyone other than you, you can make a special melee weapon attack against the marked creature as a bonus action on your next turn. You have advantage on the attack roll, and if it hits, you deal extra damage to the target equal to half your fighter level. Rounded down because that's the standard for Dungeons and Dragons. Regardless of the number of creatures you mark, you can make this special attack a number of times equal to your strength modifier minimum once, and you regain all expended uses after a long rest. Warding Maneuver is your 7th level ability, where you learn to fend off strikes directed at you, your mount, or other creatures nearby. If you or a creature you can see within 5 feet of you is hit by an attack, you can roll 1d8 as a reaction if you're wielding a melee weapon or a shield. I always like when you get to use shields as weapons, because there are some really cool characters in media and stuff. Like, I forget her name, but there's this one character in The Dragon Prince who is mute, and she is this really big kick-butt shield that she just, fights with. Hold the Line is your 10th level ability, where you become master of locking down your enemies, and creatures provoke an opportunity attack from you when they move 5 feet or more within your reach. And if you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the target speed is reduced to 0 until the end of the current turn. So that's really useful. There are different names for different sorts of people who swing swords. This is the Xanathar's Guide little gimmick where they have little notes by Xanathar, which are really funny. So he says, so there are different names for different sorts of people who swing swords? Why? Let me try. Big sword swinger and tiny sword swinger. No, that sounds like it's the size of the sword that matters. How about big meat bag with sword and little meat bag with sword? Because Xanathar is ferocious and crazy and evil. Ferocious Charger is your 15th level ability, where you can run down your foes, whether you're mounted or not. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line right before attacking your creature and you hit it with the attack, that target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. Its DC is 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength modifier, and then you can use this only once on your turn. I don't know why they said that at the end of the thing. They could probably have said it once per turn, you can do this, or something. And then at 18th level, you gain the ability Vigilant Defender, where you respond to danger with extraordinary vigilance. In combat, you get a special reaction that you can take once on every creature's turn, except yours. So you can use this to make an opportunity attack, and you can't use it on the same turn that you take your normal reaction. The final subclass in Xanathar's Guide to Everything is the Samurai. The Samurai is a fighter who is all about their implacable spirit and extraordinary vigilance. Their resolve is nearly unbreakable, and they will either yield, they have 2 choices, yield or die fighting. Not them, their enemies. They don't die. Or yield. Or lose. They're the Samurai. The Samurai has the bonus proficiency at 3rd level, same thing as the Cavalier, where they can choose another language or history, insight, performance, or persuasion. Now, the Fighting Spirit is another third level ability where your intensity in battle can shield you and help you strike true. As a bonus action on your turn, you can give yourself advantage on weapon attack rolls until the end of the current turn. When you do so, you also gain 5 temporary hit points. The number of temporary hit points increases when you reach certain levels, and then you can use this feature 3 times, and then you regain all your expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. So it's a long rest ability, same thing. I don't know. Elegant Courtier. Elegant Courtier is your 7th level ability where your discipline and attention to detail allow you to excel in social situations. Unlike me, I don't do that. Whenever you do make a charisma persuasion check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. So that's pretty cool. Your self-control also causes you to gain proficiency in wisdom saving throws. If you already have this proficiency, you instead gain proficiency intelligence or charisma. What if you have proficiency in those too? I don't know. Figure it out. Tireless Spirit is your 10th level ability where when you roll initiative and have no uses of Fighting Spirit remaining, you regain an extra use. Which I think is the same thing that they did with the Cavalier, with the, or maybe not, the Arcane, I think it was the Arcane Archer, where they get the Ever Ready shot. Rapid Strike is your 15th level ability where you learn to trade accuracy for swift strikes. If you take the attack action on your turn and have advantage on attack rolls, on an attack roll against one of the targets, you can forgo the advantage for that roll to make an additional weapon attack against that target. So that's pretty cool. You can just do more attacks. Great for fighter, because they always get so many attacks. They can attack again and again and again. Strength Before Death is their last one, the 18th level ability, where you can delay the grasp of death. With diet and exercise? No. If you take damage that reduces you to 0 hit points and doesn't kill you outright, you can use your reaction to delay falling unconscious. Oh, because we always have reactions that can prevent us from dying, right? Right? Nope. And once you use it, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. That's it for Xanathar's guide, but the fighters' level classes are spread out all over the place, and there's one in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, one in the new book, The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and 2 in Unearthed Arcana. So the one that is in Sword Coast Adventurers Guide is a bit weird. It's called the Purple Dragon Knight. Now they have the restriction of having to be the specific order of something in the Sword Coast or the Forgotten Realms or whatever, and they have to be that. Again with the restrictions. I hate restrictions, especially in Dungeons and Dragons subclasses, because they make it very hard to have fun and interesting characters. So I don't know why they would ever call this subclass Purple Dragon Knight, but I like its other name better, the Banneret, so I just say Banneret. Which is what they call it's the generic name for other campaign settings. At 3rd level, they gain the Rallying Cry ability, where you learn how to inspire your allies to fight past their injuries. So whenever you use your second wind, you can choose up to 3 creatures within 60 feet of you that are allied with you, and each one regains hit points equal to your fighter level. So that's pretty cool. The Royal Envoy is a Purple Dragon Knight, serves as an envoy of the Cormyrean Crown. Cormyr. It's Cormyr, right? Cormyr? Cormyrean. I don't know. They are basically knights of high standing, are expected to conduct themselves with grace. At 7th level, they gain proficiency in persuasion, or if you already have that, you can do one of the animal handling, insight, intimidation, or performance, and then your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses persuasion. Inspiring Surge is your 10th level ability, whenever you use Action Surge, choose another creature within 60 feet of you that is allied, and that creature can make 1 melee or ranged weapon attack with its reaction, provided that it can see or hear you. Bulwark is your 15th level ability. Bulwark, I like saying that, that's funny. You can extend the benefit of your indomitable feature. I can't talk right now. Your indomitable feature to an ally. When you decide to use indomitable to reroll an intelligence, a wisdom, or a charisma saving throw, and you aren't incapacitated, you can choose one ally within 60 feet of you that also failed its saving throw against the same effect. That creature can see or hear you. It can re-roll its saving throw and must use the new roll. So this is a very almost like bard-like, because it's all about inspiration and sort of being a leader. So that's pretty neat. The next one is the Echo Knight. Now, this is very specific to the campaign setting of Exandria with Dunamis and Dunamancy, which is really cool. Time magic thing. I will do an episode on the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, that will talk about all that. And they basically have this cool thing where they can use branched timelines and like echoes of their timelines and create and call on them to like create shadowy assistants that fight with you. So you gain this as a third level ability called Manifest Echo, and it gives a whole bunch of stuff
thanks
about
for listening to
how
this
you
episode
do
of the
it,
Dungeon Talk. We upload weekly on Fridays and we upload weekly on Saturdays if you want to check out our brand new YouTube channel. You can also find the latest news and updates on our Instagram at the Dungeon Talk. You can go ahead and ask questions on our email, thedungeontalk@gmail.com, and you can listen basically anywhere you can get your podcast. So once again, thanks for listening. Stay nerdy.
So it's really cool because you can sort of do like a swappage style kind of thing. You can just like as a bonus action, you can like teleport between in places with the echo. So you can sort of just teleport and like confuse your enemies. Sort of. That'd be funny. And you can temporarily transfer your consciousness to your echo at 7th level with the echo avatar. During this time, you are deafened and blinded, but you can see through your echo's eyes and hear through their ears. While your echo is being used in this way, it can be up to 1,000 feet away from you, so you can do some pretty cool spying stuff, which I think is really neat. Shadow Martyr is your 10th level ability, where you can make your echo basically be a martyr and then just die in front of you to protect you, because that timeline didn't happen, so too bad for you. Reclaim Potential is your 15th level ability, where you learn to absorb the fleeing magic of your echo. So whenever an echo you have is destroyed by taking damage, you gain temporary hit points equal to 2d6 plus your Constitution modifier, if you don't already have temporary hit points. And you can use this equal to your Constitution modifier minimum once, and then it's a long rest ability, so whenever you take a long rest, you get it back. So Legion of One is your 18th level Echo Knight feature, where you can use a bonus action to create 2 echoes with your Manifest Echo. So that allows you to make more echoes. I think it's really cool. If there were levels past 20, you could create an army of echoes. That'd be pretty cool. The last 2 subclasses for Fighter are all Unearthed Arcana, and they are the one from the Psionics Unearthed Arcana and the Rune Knight. So I'm going to start with the Rune Knight, which is really cool. And they have this whole thing to do with the Stone Giant lore. And Stone Giants have this whole thing where they're really good at making runes and carving runes and making and rune casting and doing rune magic, which I think is really cool. And I like what they did with it. So bonus proficiencies is one of the 3rd level abilities you gain, where you gain proficiency with Smith's tools and you learn to speak, read, and write Giant. Rune magic is when you learn how to use runes to enhance your gear. So when you gain this feature, you learn how to inscribe 2 runes of your choice on weapons, armor, or shields, which is pretty cool. And then there's a bunch of lists of runes. So there's a fire rune, hill rune, ice rune, sky rune, stone, and storm. Basically for each type of giant. You then get Giant Might, which is your 3rd level Rune Knight feature, where you can imbue yourself with the might of the giants. And then if you're smaller than large, you become large. Anything you're wearing if you lack the room to become large, your size doesn't change, though. As well as anything you're wearing, it also becomes large, because that would be really weird if you just became super big, hulked out, and then all your clothes just ripped to pieces in front of a white dragon. They're like, I'm going to kill you, and then you're like, ha ha ha, I'm a giant now. I'm sorry, I need to put some clothes on. That'd be really funny.
You have advantage on strength checks and saving throws, and your weapon attacks deal an extra d6 of damage. You can use it twice, and you regain uses after a long rest. Defensive Runes is your 7th level Rune Knight feature, where you learn to invoke your rune magic to protect your allies. When another creature you can see within 60 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to grant a bonus to their AC. The bonus equals 1 plus your intelligence modifier, a minimum of +2. Oh yeah, because 1 plus your intelligence modifier. In addition, you learn 1 new rune from the rune magic thing. Great Stature is your 10th level Rune Knight feature, where the magic of your runes permanently alters you. When you gain this feature, roll 3d4. You grow a number of inches in height equal to that roll. That's pretty cool. So you can just grow, and then moreover, the extra damage you deal with your giant might increases to a d8, and you learn another rune. I wonder if the oh no, never mind. I was gonna say that I wondered if the rune magic runes allowed you to go to each type of giant in total, but it stops at the rune magic mastery, where you can use a total of 5, and you can invoke the rune magic feature twice rather than once, and you regain expended uses during a short or long rest. Blessing of the Allfather. This is where it gets a little bit Asgardian with Norse myths and stuff, as you learn how to share your rune magic with your allies, and when you use your Giant Might feature, you can choose 1 willing creature you can see with 60 feet of you, and the chosen creature also gains the benefits of your Giant Might. So that's pretty cool. The last one is the Psychic Warrior. Now, Psychic Warrior is part of the Psionics playtest content of Unearthed Arcana. D&D's experimented with psionics, but it's always been very weird, and when they did try to do the Mystic class, it was terribly overpowered. I haven't looked into it completely, but I remember it was very powerful. So let's dive in. So the Psychic Warrior gains the 3rd level ability called Psionic Armament, where at 3rd and 10th level, you gain this. You can channel your psychic power to magically augment your prowess. When you finish a long rest, choose whether to augment your defenses or your strikes. Defenses gives you some stuff, and then strikes gives you some stuff. Telekinetic Hand is another 3rd level ability where you learn Mage Hand, and you can do it without components. You can make the structural hand we can make it invisible, and then Intelligence is your spellcasting ability. I don't think this gives you spellcasting. I haven't looked at this yet, so this is all new to me. Strength of Mind is a bonus action. You can telekinetically lash out a creature you can see within 20 feet of you. The target must make a strength saving throw against a DC equal to your 8 plus your proficiency modifier. Proficiency bonus, your intelligence plus your intelligence modifier. And on a failed save, the target takes force damage equal to 2d6 plus your intelligence modifier. And on a successful one, it's like half of that, because that's the normal thing. Telekinetic Bulwark. Telekinetic Bulwark, when you take the attack action, you can forego one of your attacks to reject a bastion of psionic power, so like a really cool giant psychic wall, like a Mr. Mime from Pokemon. Agonizing Strikes is 15th level ability, where your attacks can channel Psychic Agony. Wow, that's powerful. And then Psychic Dreadnought. The power of your mind suffuses your entire being, making you a nigh unstoppable force on the battlefield. Wow, I thought Barbarian Path of the what was it? Path of the Mountain? No, Path of the Juggernaut. I thought that was a mountain. This is a mountain. You're unstoppable. And you regain 10 hit points at the start of your turn. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. And if you're prone, you can stand up by spending 5 feet of movement. Wow. That's really powerful. So, in conclusion, I think the fighter class is a very versatile class. I already said that, and I know that because it's got so much versatility. There's just so much you can do with it. I love the fighter class, as they're one of the easiest classes to play, and if you're a beginner, I definitely suggest you play the fighter. So, thank you for listening. Once again, thanks for listening to this episode of the Dungeon Talk. We upload weekly on Fridays and uploads weekly on Saturdays if you want to check out our brand new YouTube channel. You can also find the latest news and updates on our Instagram at The Dungeon Talk. You can go ahead and ask questions on our email, thedungeontalk@gmail.com, and you can listen basically anywhere you can get your podcast. So, once again, thanks for listening. Stay nerdy, stay safe.
Dungeon Talk! Dungeon Talk! Dungeon Talk! Do 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 do!